OUR is here to regulate the operation. If you want to light and power your internet and phone, the OUR is here to get you to know your rights.
The OUR is here to regulate how the public utilities operate. Water, light, phone and internet. The OUR keep them in check.
Contact us at 1-888-CALL-OUR, the Office of Utilities Regulation. OUR, regulating utilities for the benefit of all.
Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for another in a series of webinars put on by the Office of Utilities Regulation in Jamaica. If you're joining us from here or abroad, welcome. My name is Elizabeth Bennett Marsh, and I'm the Public Education Specialist at the OUR. In today's webinar, we'll be focusing on what the Jamaica Public Service Company Limited, JPS, has asked for in its 2019-2024 tariff application to the OUR. The JPS submitted its application on December 30 last year, and it was formally accepted by the OUR on January 13, 2020. We have 120 days to review and make a decision on the application, and that puts us to May 12 this year. The regulator is the first, of the 5-year application submitted by the JPS since the Electricity Act of 2015, the OUR Amended Act of 2015, as well as the Electricity License of 2016, which set out clear guidelines as to what should be included in such an application and what and how they should be assessed. In today's webinar, we'll hear what are some of the main considerations of the OUR in reviewing this application by the JPS? What are some of the main features of the JPS application? And just as importantly, how you can have your say through our consultation process. Joining me today are the OUR's Deputy Director General, who has responsibility for electricity and the water and sewage sectors, Cedric Wilson, as well as OUR's Manager for Regulation and Policy for Electricity and Water and Sewage, Winston Robotham.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Welcome. Welcome, Cedric.
Thanks again.
We will also get to have your say in this live webinar through our Facebook and YouTube pages, as well as a special WhatsApp number that we have set up for you. That is 876-373-5927. That's 876-373-5927. And without further hesitation, I now throw over to Cedric Wilson. Cedric.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. I think it would be best to begin by looking at the electricity market structure that exists. And the electricity market structure that we have in Jamaica could best be described as a single buyer model. And in this regard, JPS buy power from what we call IPP, independent power providers. Right now they sell, they have about 611 megawatt of capacity that is sold to JPS. In addition, JPS generates its own electricity. There are thermal plants, there are about 8 hydro plants, and it has also 1 wind plant. But what is interesting or very important is that it is a monopoly supplier in that it has exclusive right to transmit, distribute, and supply electricity to customers, both households and businesses. So, in essence, JPS is really a monopoly. So the question, therefore, is what is the role of the regulator? In the context of a monopoly, the regulator's role is to create the conditions that approximates a competitive market. And what is usually the case with competitive markets when compared to monopolies is that they have greater efficiency in terms of cost. The price is usually lower as well. And the output in terms of megawatt hours is usually larger. And therefore, the question is, in the context of the electricity market, what does the customer want and what does the investor want? What the customer wants, and that is what makes the customer happy, is a safe, reliable service at a low price. That's what customers want. The investor, on the other hand, they want to supply electricity safely. They don't want any problems with people getting electrocuted or anything like that. They want to supply electricity reliably, and they also want to make high profits. So the question is, where does the regulator comes in? The objective of the regulator really is to balance the interests of the customer and the interests of the investor. And when we talk about balancing, what we really mean is that the regulator should set prices that are affordable to customers, and that can be relative. And at the same time, the investor should get a reasonable rate of return. People do not go into business out of charity. People go into business to make money. And the regulator's responsibility is to ensure that the profit that is there is a reasonable profit, and it ensures that investments takes place, not just in the short run, but also in the long run. Now, price regulation in general can be classified into two broad categories. You have cost-based regulation and you have incentive-based regulation. The cost-based is just simply based on the cost of the utility. In our case, it would have been JPS, plus a profit on top of it, a rate of return on top of it. This kind of regulation, since the 60s, have been challenged. There have been studies showing that cost-based regulation lead to higher prices because there tend to be cost padding and gold plating, to use those jargons, which makes the price of electricity higher than what it should be. So there has been, over the years, a trend towards incentive-based tariff, and two such methodologies are the price cap and the regulatory, the revenue cap. Usually, they are not one-year tariffs, so to speak. They are usually established over a period of 3 to 5 years. How does the yes, just to going in the wrong direction. Huh? Yeah, revenue is really price times volume, price times quantity, so to speak. The amount that is sold times the price, and that is revenue. And that concept is important in understanding price cap and revenue cap. With a price cap, what is done is the price is fixed over a 5-year period in real terms, or a 3-year period, as the case might be, and revenue, the volume or the quantity can change over the time. So given that the price is fixed and volume changes, if volume increases, then revenue will increase. And if the volume decreases or quantity decreases, then revenue will also go down. We have had a price cap in place since 2001, and it ended in 2016, as Liz just explained, when those changes were made to the legislation in 2015 and JPS's license in 2016. Now, the revenue cap is a little bit different in that instead of putting the cap or fixing price, what you do, you fix revenue for the period of time. So therefore, what it means is that revenue is fixed, but price and volume will have to move in the opposite direction depending on what happens. So what this means is that should quantity increase, then price will have to go down. And on the other hand, if quantity decreases, then revenue will go up. So that is how the revenue cap. And the revenue cap is considered as a means of decoupling or isolating revenue from what happens to volumes. That is really the idea of the revenue cap. So what happens is, if in 1 year you might find the kilowatt hours are much more, or the quantity volume are much more than what you expected, what it means is that the utility will get more revenue than was expected. And what it means is, in the following year, you will have to reduce prices in order to accommodate or make adjustment for the excess that was accumulated or accrued to the company in the previous year. That is how it actually works. Along with the revenue cap, in the case of JPS, you have true up for volumes. As I just mentioned, if you have excess, and it goes in terms of sales, demand, and customer numbers. You also have adjustments to the revenue cap on the basis of system losses and foreign exchange as well. So the question, therefore, is what is the difference between the price cap and the revenue cap? Insofar as what we are going to implement now, in the past, what the price cap was historical. So you would look back and see what happened in the previous year before the rate application. In this case, it is a forward-looking thing. So you have to look at JPS's plan for the next 5 years in order to come up with an appropriate tariff. The next aspect of the revenue cap, price cap, that differs is that with the price cap, it is less regulatory intrusive in that you don't have to get into so many things. But with the revenue cap, I wonder if I said that right. With the revenue cap, you have to get into more details in making the assessment of the application. The third thing is, with the price cap, there is less risk in terms of what will happen to prices on the basis of changes in volume. With the revenue cap, if volume changes, prices will go up and down and all kind of things. Now, and the last thing I want to say is that we are now in the process of dealing with it, and this is the first time it has occurred, so the outcome for us will be most interesting. So, over to you, Winston.
Thanks much, Cedric. And I want to pick up, Cedric, on that revenue cap that you mentioned. What is this revenue that JPS is asking for? And this slide, and viewers, I thank you for joining us. I know it's a data-intensive tariff application, and most of you would have gone online to look at that submission. It's over 500 pages, which has numerous data as appendices. So let me put the essence of it here, and I hope you will be able to get a better understanding as to what is this revenue cap that Cedric mentioned. And this slide is showing you that in 2019, and in fact, the submission, as Liz mentioned, is really a 2019 to 2023 application, and so we're now in 2020. But of course, there are delays because, as you might have recalled, in 2019, when the submission came we had to reject the application. Notwithstanding, we are looking at the 2019 revenue of 63.9 billion Jamaican dollars that JPS is asking for year 2019 of the 5-year review. In 2020, 62.3 billion, and in 2021, 62.5 billion dollars. In 2022, 60.8 billion, and in 2023, it's 60.9 or approximately 61 billion Jamaican dollars in revenues that JPS would like for us to cap in terms of allowing you, the ratepayer, to pay that amount. What is included in this? JPS is saying that there are some decommissioning costs totaling approximately $4.4 billion. Some stranded assets such as the street lights. You would have observed that we're getting some new LED lights. The old HSP, the high sodium bulbs, they are stranded assets, and JPS would like to recover some of that, including some meters that they're changing out to the smart meters. Approximately $4.06 billion worth of stranded assets they're seeking to recover. In addition, some depreciation expenses totaling $2.9 billion, recovery of some return on investment. Since the change of that license in 2016, JPS is looking back to collect some additional revenues for some investments that they would have put into the ground since the last review in 2019. Sorry, 2009 was the last review? Yes, the last 5-year review. So
2014.
Yes, 2014 was the last 5-year review. So there are some assets that JPS is seeking investment on in returns since we set those last prices. And we need to explore that possibility. So they're asking us to look at some capital expenditure, some new capital expenditure in totaling 100 million US dollars, approximately 12.8 billion in 2019 that JPS wants to put into the ground. And that chart is showing you, that table rather, is showing you that in 2020, some $11.5 billion, $13 billion in 2021, and 2022. Now, what are these projects? They have approximately 12 projects that are greater than 10 million US dollars in capital expenses. And 48 of those projects are below 10 million, and the major projects are like the smart meter project, approximately 85 million US dollars. They are putting in place, they are proposing to, a 138 kVA line. I think it's from Old Harbour to come into Kingston to bring those power from that transmission line for that new power plant. And voltage standardization. We have fluctuations in voltage. They are planning to standardize the voltage to 24 kVA. And there's a distribution line that they are looking to support some structural integrity, and that should cost approximately 22 million US dollars. Some grid modernization, and of course the residential automated metering infrastructure, they want to continue to improve on that. So that's what is before us in terms of capital expenses. Now, how much money do JPS shareholders are seeking on their investment? They are seeking on their return on equity of 11.2%. That's after tax. Pre-tax, it's 16.8%, because as you know, the ratepayers will pay for the taxes that the government will collect from the business operation. And the operation is about 50% of debt, 50% of equity. And the cost of debt now has come down to approximately 7.4%, which is not bad. And I think that's before us, and we will investigate if those numbers are indeed reasonable for the ratepayers. System losses, that's one of our sore points. What is it that JPS is planning to do in terms of reducing system losses? They're proposing that over the 5-year period, system losses should come down by approximately 2.3%. But of course, it's broken down into various categories, and we're hoping that the ratepayers will look a little closely as to what they are planning to do, especially in the area of what's within the JPS control, because we're seeing some numbers that are interesting. And so we will explore if in fact JPS is making enough effort to reduce system losses. The heat rate, of course, of their thermal plant, we know that we have a lot of IPPs around, and those plants are not really under JPS control as how efficient they are producing. But of course, for their plant, they are planning to improve its efficiency and reduce the heat rate, which is our efficiency performance indicator, from 11,450 kilojoules per kilowatt hour to under 9,600 kilojoules per kilowatt hour over the 5-year period. So that's interesting proposal, and we hope that there's some room there where we could even force them further to improve efficiency in that regard. There's, of course, for the first time, the Q factor. We call it the reliability factor that we want to now introduce, and that is where the customer should ensure that JPS is held accountable for when those outages coming. Are they coming to restore quickly enough? So there are some indicators that we are going to be setting baseline this year. JPS has put it forward.
So Q meaning quality
factor?
The
quality of service factor, the reliability of the system itself. So there are the customer hours in terms of how long JPS will take to come to restore service, the entire fluctuation in the voltage and so forth, any interruption in service. JPS is now going to be held accountable if in fact the standards that we set, those targets are not achieved. And of course, the annual adjustments that you could have mentioned earlier about what do we put back if in JPS in fact gets a little too much revenue than what we cap, because there's a process each year, the annual adjustment, that will take care of that. If of course we cap say $1 billion for JPS and they only recover 900 million, then there's a shortfall. So of course prices should have gone up then. So we will have to increase prices to ensure that JPS is made whole in terms of the revenues that we will now cap over the 5-year period. So of course there is an adjustment in 2019 that is due, and they have in their submission here presented a $636 million that they are seeking to recover. They are of the view that their performance was of such that the revenues should increase. That's for 2019 revenues, because the 2018 targets, they are of the view that they outperform. But we'll take a close look at that one, and I'm sure the viewers will be looking back to see the determination that we make on this particular area, the 2019 target adjustment. And of course, what else is in this submission? JPS is this time around seeking to reduce the lifeline consumption. Most residential customers, all residential customers, they do get a subsidized rate on the first 100 kilowatt of our consumption. JPS is seeking to reduce the amount under this category to 50 kilowatt hour. And of course, residential customers, they are now looking to put 3 tiers in place under that 50 kilowatt hour. And then there's 51 to 500 kilowatt hour. That's a category of customers that will pay a different rate than people who consume over 500 kilowatt hours. So there are 3 tiers for the residential. And the small commercial, the rate 20 class, they're also proposing to split that up in 2 blocks. 150 kilowatt hour is the first consumption block, and over 150 the second. Large customers, the rate 40 customers, JPS is seeking to get a new rate class in this area for those customers, the rate 40 customers who have a demand between 1 and 2 megavolt amperes. And also for the rate 50 class too, they are seeking to introduce a new rate class. That's the rate 50.
I see you have TOU there, Winston, just to explain that it's time of use?
Yes, the time of use.
I know you all don't talk English,
Yes, I can understand.
You technical people.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the time of use.
Yes.
And the rate design continuing for the rate 70, we had introduced sometime during the last 5-year review period, rate 70 class. Those people have a large megavolt ampere demand on the system. We're also looking to get more benefit from them in terms of how their time of use works. So JPS has made that proposal. We'll look at that. And the street lights, of course, we have the new LED lights. JPS is proposing to have a per fixture charge. So each street light should now be having its own charge rather than the entire block of street lights. And of course, there's a distributed generation tariff that's been proposed, where customers who have their own supply at home and those people who are, having their own generation at source, JPS is proposing a tariff as to how they would connect to the grid. There's the EV tariff. Electricity EVs are now prominent, and I hear the government is talking about even the buses being.
Oh yes, it's going to be a buzzword.
Right, and so JPS has made proposal as to what will be, their EV rates, and so we'll take a close look at that. And also, those customers who want to wheel tariff, JPS has, interestingly put forward a methodology as to how wheeling should apply. So those customers who really want that wheeling thing to get going, because they are now generating all that power at their plants, they would want to transport to other facilities. JPS is now, making the proposal for that. And of course, guaranteed standards and overall standard, that's also there. But JPS, they did not propose to have any new standard. And of course, we are looking at if in fact, yes, what is there is sufficient, enough to hold them accountable to you, the viewers and the ratepayers. But of course, there's a response to emergency that they want us to convert to an overall, rather than those penalties to be applied. That is the guarantee standard. They want to shift that one. And I'm certain, Liz, your department, CPA, they'll be looking closely at what's going on in terms of the guaranteed and overall standard. How much money will this cost you, the viewer? Well, in rates, and this is my final chart, you all want to know. So yes, they're asking, you to look at all this. How much am I to pay? Well, JPS is saying you, the residential customers, your non-fuel, because your bill is in two categories, your fuel rate and your non-fuel rate. JPS is saying the non-fuel rate should go up for you by 20 from 20 cents, 20.5 cents to $20.6 to $29, approximately a 41% increase. So that's what before. So your current non-fuel rate is $20.59, and they want it to be increased to $29.11. So you will see a 41% increase in your non-fuel rate if it is that the OUR accepts all of what JPS is saying. But Liz, the OUR will not just accept what JPS. We'll be looking closely at it. And of course, the table here will show you for the various other rate classes, such as the rate 40 customers. They are looking to see their non-fuel go up by 22%, and the rate 50 customers about 16%. That new rate class, the rate 70 customers, they'll see their non-fuel going up to 26. And overall, with the fuel, non-fuel, residential should see like a 17% increase in their bill, should of course the OUR accepts JPS submission. So I invite you all to look at the determination, take a close look, because a lot is there that we have to chew on. Liz, back to you.
Thank you so much, Winston. And of course, it may seem like a very technical document. Much of it is, but at the heart of it, we also want to tap into you, the customer, and what is your view as to what the JPS has proposed. So you would have seen from Winston's presentation and from Cedric's presentation, what are the considerations that go into assessing such a document, as well as what are the major asks of the JPS. We also want to go to you, the customers, in the form of a consultation. So we are coming to you in various formats to get your take as to what JPS is asking for. And as they have said before as well, these are all proposals. So an important part of our assessment of JPS's application is our public consultation process. And this takes place in several formats. Persons can choose to have written submissions to the OUR, and we have a special email address set up for that. We'll tell you about that in a little while. We also have business meetings with some of JPS's largest blocks of customers, the business community. But the most popular form of consultation is the public consultation in the form of town hall meetings that we'll be having across various parishes starting next week. Why are consultations important? Consultations are important because they allow for face-to-face contact with utility representatives. It allows the customers of JPS to eyeball the executives of JPS in this instance. It also allows the OUR's technical team to hear firsthand about local utility issues. As you can appreciate, we can't always know exactly what's happening in your neck of the woods. When we come to our community meetings such as these, it allows us an opportunity to experience and to hear firsthand from you, the JPS customers, exactly what's happening there. And it allows us to conduct further investigations into the issues. It may also, as it has done in several instances, allow us to make certain decisions pertaining to electricity supply, for example, in your area. And set timelines for when those issues need to be resolved by the utility company. And of course, it also assists us in setting quality of service standards, including the JPS guaranteed standards. The format of the town hall meetings, very simple. It's facilitated by the OUR. We do not make the case for the JPS. We leave that up to the JPS representatives who will be there. They will make a broad presentation about the major aspects of their presentation, and then we open up the floor for customers who are in attendance to pose questions to the JPS. We recognize as well that some customers who may attend may have very personal issues pertaining to JPS that cannot be addressed on the main floor, and so JPS will be coming with their help desks to all the locations, and the OUR also will be having help desks available for customers who want to talk one-on-one with our representatives. The guaranteed standards, as we said before, it allows us an opportunity to assess the guaranteed standards that the JPS has in place. The JPS has already made its proposal in its application as to how it would want to see the guaranteed standards and the overall standards reviewed. We will go and assess it, and of course we will also make representation to the customers as to what they think about how these changes should be made. Recall that in the last assessment of a JPS 5-year application in 2014, we made several significant changes to the guaranteed standards, the most significant one being that most of them were converted to automatic compensation status, meaning that customers no longer have to submit claim forms. So, where will our consultations be? We're going to be in 8 parishes between March 10 and 25, and we're quickly going to tell you about them. We're starting in St. Elizabeth, in Santa Cruz at the Sharon Baptist Church, and that's on March 10. And of course, all meetings start at 6 p.m. Following St. Elizabeth, we're heading to Manchester next week, Wednesday, at the Manchester High School in Mandeville. That's March 11, and of course, that starts at 6 p.m. Then we move to Clarendon at the St. James Methodist Church Hall in Maypen on March 12. The following week, we'll be in Kingston at the Pembroke Hall High School, and that's along the Washington Boulevard. I think most people know where the Pembroke Hall High School is, and that also starts at 6 p.m. We move to Westmoreland after that on March 18 at the Negril Community Center. Then it's on to St. James at the St. John's Methodist Community Action Center in Montego Bay, and that will be on March 19. After that, we go to St. Catherine the following week, during the week of March 23, and on March 23, we'll be at the Jose Marti Technical High School, and that's along the strip along the ferry, and it's central to residents who live in Portmore as well as other communities in St. Catherine. And our final consultation in the form of a town hall meeting will be held in St. Mary at the St. Mary Municipal Corporation, and that takes place on March 25. Of course, all meetings, as I said before, will be at 6 p.m. We encourage you to tell your neighbors about it, get your political representatives involved, to mobilize community representatives to attend. If you can't come, then maybe you have a president of a citizens association who you think should attend and represent you in terms of the needs of your community and your broader area. We will be liaising with your community representatives, your political representatives. We'll be having town criers. We're already distributing flyers in your community. We have been distributing our messages through WhatsApp groups, as well as our radio and television and newspaper advertisements, and on our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and of course YouTube. So we want to hear from you. Please contact us. If it is that you want to submit an application, submission, beg your pardon, to the application, then I invite you to do so at JPS Tariff 2019 at our.org.jm. You can also visit our website for further details, as well as call us. We are listed in the directory. So we look forward to seeing you at all our events. If you can't make one, make another. At least every parish will have a neighboring event. So we ask you, if it is that you are in a parish that is where a town hall meeting is not taking place, then we ask you to come to one that's close to you. We are almost ready to wrap up because we're almost out of time, but I wanted quickly to just ask Cedric, because we've heard this before and I wanted to pose it to Cedric. How do you respond to persons who say that everything that the utility asks for, we tend to give them? So what's the purpose of a consultation? What's the purpose of an analysis of such an application?
Well, actually, the OUR has been getting applications since 2001, and there hasn't been a single one of these occasions that we have granted JPS exactly what they have asked for.
Mm-hmm.
We have always looked rigorously at the application, and we have analyzed it. And we, as I've said before, we try to balance the objectives or the interests of the customer with those of the investor, the utility, and we come up with a rate.
Yeah.
One of the things I've heard it said by other regulators throughout the world, if everybody is happy about what you have done as a regulator, then you might have made some wrong decision.
Yes, yes.
So it's a difficult position to be in, but we have to try and balance the equation.
And as you pointed out in your presentation, Cedric, we have to balance the affordability of the utility service with allowing the investors to make a reasonable return on their investment. And the OUR is an economic regulator.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. You see, there is sometimes the tendency for people to get caught up with gratification in the short run, while things like these can lead to long-term regret. You know, so you have to bear in mind the long-term and the short-term, the interests of the consumer as well as the interests of the regulator, the utility, so to speak.
Winston, I noticed from the slide that you presented on in terms of the bill impact, we make sure when we're talking about it publicly to say that JPS has applied for a tariff review and not a tariff increase. And when I look at that bill impact table, I see that JPS is also recommending a reduction in rates for some categories of its customers. Can you say what is some of the rationale or maybe a rationale for that recommendation from the JPS?
I guess it's really some incentives that JPS is looking at, especially because JPS is of the view that its large customers are, deflecting from the grid. A lot of people putting up their solar panels now. And so they want to incentivize some of those rate categories to remain. So you may see in some instances where they're putting in new rate classes and may want to incentivize those customers to reduce existing rates for them to retain them on the grid.
So why should I, as a residential customer, care about the fact that big businesses are deflecting from the grid?
Well, of course, we should really care as residential customers, because if they go, JPS needs to collect all that revenues from who remain.
Oh, yes.
And so if the large customer remain on the grid, at least the JPS will be getting that significant revenues from those customers. So it's really a win-win situation for us if those large customers are retained.
So it's in our best interest that they stay on the grid. Not too many of them are coming off the grid. Final question as I wrap up, Winston. What's the composition of your team? I know you're the team lead on this. You have that unenviable task in the OUR. We're not envying you a bit. We know you're very caught up with it. But what's the composition? Give us a profile of the competence of the team that's looking at it.
I tell you, it's not one that you should really envy, because it's really a lot of work. In fact, this is so data intensive because up to now we're still
I haven't seen you in a bit.
Yeah, we're still seeking to get data from JPS.
Yes.
And we have quite a comprehensive team, cross-section of consultants in terms of engineering consultants. We have economists, we have people in finance, and of course the attorneys at law who are looking closely. So it's a wide array of people and experts who need to look at it. Sometimes we have to even go to experts abroad, in some of the areas in terms of these tariff designs that JPS is proposing. We also seek to get international perspective. So it's really one that is intense, Liz.
Yeah.
That's the word, intense.
Thank you, Winston. And of course, we look forward to your contribution as a customer of the Jamaica Public Service Company Limited. The full application is on our website. We'll also have had requests via our WhatsApp communication group to upload these presentations on our website. We'll be doing that, so you can visit by the end of workday today, and we'll have them uploaded. I want to thank you all for taking time out to view this very important webinar, and we hope that you will refer it to friends and relatives. It will still remain on our YouTube page as well as on our Facebook page. Thanks to producer Gordon Brown, our social media coordinator Ryan Rage Riley, technical team from Visual Tech Limited. Thank you very much, Visual Tech. And of course, Jamaica Conference Center, which continues to provide good space for our webinar. I am Elizabeth Bennett Marsh, the Public Education Specialist at the Office of Utilities Regulation. Until next time, take care.
The OUR is here to regulate the operation. If you want to light and power your internet and phone, the OUR is here to get you to know your rights.
The OUR is here to regulate how the public utilities operate. Water, like phone and internet. The OUR keep them in check.
Contact us at 1-888-CALL-OUR, the Office of Utilities Regulation. OUR, regulating utilities for the benefit of all.